You're here for the build up to the show and for the opening and then for the couple of days after. Has this been sort of looming, the excitement building and coming up to this date? And
Yep.
What's the feeling like now that it's just about here? Is it relief or is it, is it sort of still anticipation?
It's partly excitement. It is some anticipation. A little bit nervous, but the work's here now and so am I, so I'm keen to just see how it goes. I'm really happy with how it looks on the walls. I'm proud of the work I've done. I think it's a good balance of what I wanted to paint and what I think works in a gallery space. I think it's a progression of the work I've done in the past, and I always want to be moving forward. So I think overall I'm just really proud of the work and keen to open Aliases and show the people of Christchurch the body of work.
And as a body of work, how preconceived was it? Was it a case of having a body of work and and finding a show, or was it a case of a body of work constantly kind of evolving in the build up to this?
It was a conceptual. It wasn't even that conceptual. It was more like I had this picture in my head, and I'd had it for quite a long time. It was like at least 2 years in the making in my head of how I wanted these pieces to look. And I figured it out on about 3 of them. Like pro-choice was one of the first pieces that got figured out. And I'd figured out most of the composition. And then the Alabama and some of the middle US states, they started revoking these rights that women have had for a long time and fought for. And that gave me some message to kind of finish up that piece. And then it kind of came together as a whole package. Like I had the style that I wanted. I'd had it in my head for a long time, and then conceptually, and it just sort of happened that they came together. Like at that time, that was an issue, and that style fit that meaning, that message, as far as I was concerned. And then pieces like Fire Within, that was coming together around the same time. Once I sort of had those designs, I realized that there was a big connection to the birds, where it was all about choosing these parts, these colors, these different motifs to describe persona or an alias. And I found this metaphor that the birds were choosing what their nests, i.e. their homes, were going to be made of. And I thought that was quite a beautiful connection to try and convey in a simple word like aliases. So basically the work or the style and the aesthetics of the pieces led me to the connection conceptually that the work embodies.
Is the visual appearance that you've been developing and where it's been going, because these works are unmistakably Chimp.
Yeah.
Has the visual appearance led to a crystallization of those conceptual ideas?
Yep.
Or did these ideas, these concepts impact the
Where
visual
the work?
appearance?
Okay. I think on the later side of the series, pieces like Purple Pain, pieces like The City, the concept drove where I wanted to take the pieces, and I think those 2 pieces are some of the most successful pieces in the series because I had such a clear idea of what the show and the body of work was about. But to arrive at the idea of Aliases, I don't like working conceptually towards a style. I prefer to find something that I think looks amazing and different and original, and then once I've looked at the work and I see what the connections, like the similarities between the pieces, because successful pieces I think need some rhythm or repetition, like a song, they hum or sing along together. And what I found from the pieces I painted first, that Aliases as a concept was what I wanted to make the whole series about, and then that drove what I would call the second half of the body of work. So the first 3 or 4 pieces drove the conceptual idea, and then the graphics and the visuals were driven by the concept for the later half of the series.
Right. And I guess, for you, there's that technical aspect, like the execution of works, the medium, the process of painting is such a big part, right? It's can't be disentangled from any of that other stuff. So is that often leading you first and foremost? Like that technical aspect, is that the primary driver for development visually, just understanding what you can do.
Yeah.
Is that still a massive part?
When I'm working at canvas scale, so a bit smaller than a lot of the murals I've worked on, or what, like spray paint as a medium lends itself to walking up to a decent sized wall, and if you don't have to worry about how big or small you want to go, and you just let the image you've got or the wall and your hand depict how big you want to paint, that's quite satisfying. But when you're working to a set parameter, your skills with the medium are important because you need to know what you're going to be able to accomplish. And so in the past, with a lot of commissions and some of the other studio work I've done, I've said to myself or to clients that, nah, this is what I can accomplish in this scale. If you wanted to do this, we'd have to go bigger or go onto a wall. But I think with this series, I've leveled up with my ability with spray paint and also opening up to other mediums. I've used a bit more acrylic, a little bit of brush, more markers, and also just blending with my hand. Like,
Right.
if you wait just enough time with spray so that it hasn't dried fully or it's too wet, you can kind of smear it a little bit, but also incorporating markers to fill out really fine details and smearing that with my hand just to sort of give it some blending or some bleed. I quite enjoy using line that has sharp and soft edges, a thick thin line if you will, and overall it's the expansion of the tools I've been willing to use that's helped me progress the art that I can produce a lot further than where I had been. The style is familiar, but I think technically there's a progression, and also looking at them, the composition's more sophisticated and refined. I think that's what I've, with something, like if you paint a bird and you try to paint it realistic, the goal is quite simple. You want to paint it as realistic as possible. But with these, I want to I want to capture the essence of a portrait or a person or a bird, but then I want to abstract it into something more, like to show something that you can't just see from a photograph or from looking at something in real life. And I think that's where the refinement and the years of honing a style come in. I don't think I'll ever be satisfied, really. You just keep going. But I think in terms of jumping ahead from where I was, this is a very successful body of work.
Yeah. What and you sort of touched on that there, and that's something I'm quite interested in. I was thinking about kind of an analogy of the abstract and the figurative, or the representational, and like that connection between like music. So take hip hop, and you've got the verse, the literal of the flow, the lyrics essentially, against also then the abstract of the beat.
The beat.
Is that something that you kind of see, can understand, or is there's something more that you can expound on there in terms of those two elements combining? Is there, because in both, right, there's an underlying sense of rhythm.
Yes.
So that's sort of visually applicable as well.
There's two layers to this question. I'm going to try my best. Don't let me forget about the rhythm, because I have something to say about that. So music, especially hip hop, but all music really, has a big influence on my work, mainly on the conceptual side, or I tend to write down little lines that I like in my black books or my design, like with my designs, to help remind me what I was thinking of when whether there was a positive essence or something a little bit darker, or just what idea I was kind of thinking at the time, because it's easy to forget these things once you've passed, so it's good to have some written document of it. It's kind of like a diary, because I don't actually keep one of those, but that leads the feeling of the piece for me a lot. Like, it's the songs I'm listening to at the time can decide what the piece is about for me, but it can also, maybe I didn't actually have anything else to say there.
But is it something about the rhythm?
The rhythm is a design concept as much as it is like for dancing or music, because rhythm it's like repetition, but it's not quite the same. It's sort of like building off the pattern. I think there's rhythm in colour, like there's a little dash of pink there, and it's repeated a little bit up there, and then it's splashed like boldly flowing from the top of the piece or something. But it can also be in like the rhythm of the lines, like are they all flowing in a similar direction, and then there's a harsh cut off, which it's like that's like the beat stops, and then there's a pause for dramatic effect, and then the chorus starts, or the beat switches up or something, and then it might return back to that if you repeat an element that was a little bit higher up in the composition or something. I think about it very fluidly between music and visual art when it comes to rhythm, because they're both like key elements of the mediums, and not everyone will use them, but I think it's important to create a connected composition, because my work is it's not minimalist, it's almost maximalist, so adding things like rhythm helps to keep it in check and balance and weight the piece properly. And I think music inspires and sort of coaches me through that.
Right. Speaking of music, you also mentioned that reading a lot of autobiographies influenced a lot of this work.
Yep.
So can you give us some insight into that?
I read the Malcolm X biography and the John Lennon biography, Gandhi autobiography, just sort of, I kind of picked people that I didn't know anything about, so I'd learn a lot more than if I read something I knew about someone I knew a lot about already. And I definitely learned a lot. I think especially the John Lennon and the Malcolm X autobiographies, they changed as people so much throughout their lifetimes, and not always for the better, but I think that inspires Aliases in the way that people are always collecting and curating themselves, and it's funny to sort of like take a snapshot of who you were like 5 years ago or even just 3 years ago, and then if you put that out on a portrait or a painting like they are here in Aliases, you might laugh or you might be pleased with what you see. But I think this is just like it's not a literal depiction, but it's like a abstract manifestation of what that could look like what colors, what kind of emotions you were feeling, like those colors, what those colors would look like, what issues what were you worrying about at the time, because a lot of the time you might not even care what you were thinking about like that long ago.
Yeah. Like
here, like there's a piece called Shelter. Like I was saving up for a house for a long time, and then as soon as I did a little bit of travel, I was like, oh, maybe I don't even need to like stay here, maybe I should go out and see how far I can go before even worrying about that, because I was so like, if I want to be an artist freelance and full time, I need to like give myself a base, and I need to make sure of like, if I get that, then I won't have to worry so much. But at the same time, maybe it's best to just go as far into the world as you can and see how far you can go, and then worry about that a little bit later. I think what I also learned from the autobiographies is that having the skill to sort of adjust your personality and curate it for who you're talking to is an underappreciated skill, but it's a celebration of that skill, but it's also a critique of it, because it's a bit of a shame that we have to do that, and I think we have to do that more in the digital age, when you feel like, because you see the highlights of everyone on social media, and then you're like, oh wow, I'm definitely curating my life, I know I do, But it's not just about that. It's like, if you're going to if you're with really good friends, you're going to be a lot more open than you are with someone you've just met, or someone you're trying to sell, your art to, potentially. Maybe you're not, but I think it's just a celebration of people, going to the effort of adjusting themselves for who they're dealing with, and that's sort of like, that's one of the skills of being human, Yep. You're able to adjust yourself, and you're able to think consciously enough to decide how you want others to perceive you and how you want to appear.
Yeah, for sure.